Hey guys, welcome to another video. And if you're new to my channel, my name's Ikene, and really I've been growing closer to God over I'd say this past year. And so really I just make these videos to help anybody else who's looking to grow closer to God, anybody who's looking to grow closer in their faith. I'm hoping that these videos are helpful for you guys. And so in this video, I was reading this book, The Pathway to Success by Joyce Meyer. And in that book, she said something that just really struck me and it really inspired me to make a video just elaborating on this point and really just talking about how important it is to think that way. And so, what she said in the book is she talked about the importance of looking at yourself the way that God looks at you and viewing yourself in the same light. Because so often in life, it becomes easy for us to look at ourselves as a reflection of our circumstances. So, if we're going through, if we failed an exam, we tend to look at ourselves as being unintelligent or even being, dumb or being an idiot because we didn't do as well as we think we should have on this exam. Whereas God would never look at us and think that we're idiots or that we're dumb. And so it's really important that if you ever do poorly on an exam or if you feel like you're not, kind of achieving up to your potential, it's important to not look down upon yourself because God never looks down on you, never looks down on me. And so that was one of the biggest struggles that I had when I was in schools, that I would ride the wave consistently of like either I would do well on an exam and I would feel like I was on top of the world and I was just the smartest person, not to ever exist, but I would just start to think, oh, like I'm really smart, I've got this in the bag, I'm really good at school. And then literally the next week, I could get like a C or a D on an exam and think, oh, well, I'm an idiot. School isn't for me. I'm not good at school. Other people are so much better at school than I am. How come I can't be good at school like they are? And so, really, just living on that roller coaster of, you're amazing, okay, you're terrible, amazing and terrible. And it's like God doesn't look at us that way. When we sin, when we fall, when we make mistakes, God doesn't look at us and go, oh, these idiots. God still loves us. And yes, even though it hurts him when we don't live up to our full potential or we, sin or we don't achieve the way that we could, yes, it hurts him, but he doesn't change his viewpoint of us when we come up short. And so it even just makes me think about the importance of parenting children as well, where it's important to parent children in a way that God parents us because we are all children of God. And so when our kids do something, and I don't have kids yet, but in the future when I have kids, I know that I'm not going to judge them based on the good things that they do. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to give them this conditional love where I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, well, if my son gets 100% on an exam, I'm going to be super excited. But if he gets a 75%, I'm going to be really upset and I won't talk to him for 2 days. Just having that discrepancy is going to be really bad for the kid long term. And so even if, you see your child underachieving and you think that he should have gotten a certain grade but he didn't, it's still important to love him regardless, and it's important to still talk to him and sit down and, talk about how that he can do better. And saying that, not necessarily saying you're disappointed in him, but just having him know that you see the things that he can achieve and that he has so much more potential than what he's achieving. And that way you allow kids to still believe in themselves while not getting too down on themselves, because it's a fine line that you want to walk with kids, where you don't want a child to feel like they are solely a representation of their grades, because this is where you get kids who feel like their grades, that's all that they have. And they feel like without high achieving grades, they feel like they're a nobody. And that's not, that's never the case. And so, even in terms of relationships, the same thing can apply where we might think that, oh, well, if you get a girl's number, you're amazing and all of that stuff, and you're attractive and you're desirable. But then if you get rejected by a girl, you can start to think, oh, I'm undesirable, I'm unattractive, girls don't want to be with me. But really, it's all about taking things in stride and understanding that ultimately, just like it says in Genesis, that we are all made in God's image. And so, basing your self perception just because of how someone else views you isn't the way that God views you. Because we were all made in his image, we're all attractive. There's really no such thing as like, oh, so and so's ugly. God doesn't look at anybody and think, oh, they're ugly, because God made us all. And so that was something I also really struggled with, was this self-confidence thing growing up, where it was like 1 minute I'd feel like I was attractive and I was desirable, and the next minute I'd feel like, oh, well, I don't know if anyone wants me, I don't know, I might just be single for the rest of my life. And so viewing yourself on such a wide spectrum just because of external circumstances also just isn't really good for you. And one thing that my wife also told me, because I was talking to her about the topic of this video, she also was saying that she remembers seeing in a video that it's also important when you're dating to remember that, yes, God sees you as, a king, God sees you as a queen. And so it's important that, yeah, of course, that you view yourself that way, but it's also important that you end up with a partner that also views you that way. Because where we tend to see a discrepancy is, even if someone has this high, value and kind of perception of themselves, if they end up with a partner who doesn't share that same viewpoint, it can start to bring the other person's perception of themselves down. Because if you have this woman who believes that, yes, she was made in the image of God, yes, she's a queen, and yes, she's worthy of love, but she ends up with someone who doesn't treat her that way or doesn't respect her that way, it can start to diminish her perception of herself. Because then what can start to happen is the woman starts to think, okay, well, is there something wrong with me? Is there a reason why, I feel like I'm worthy of love, but I'm not getting it? And this can just lead to, people starting to view themselves the way that the world views them. And that's not what God wants. God wants us to be focused on him, and God wants us to always see ourselves the way that he sees us, regardless of what the world says, regardless of what's going on in the world. And so another example of this is, I've been bad with budgeting for a good portion of my life, and for the longest time I just kind of told myself like, oh, well, I'm not good with money and that's probably never going to change, and so there's no point in even trying to change that because I'm just not good with money. But what this did is, it kind of allowed me to continue to make poor decisions and not hold myself accountable, because I had just said that that was the way that it was, that I'm never going to be good at budgeting, and there's nothing I can do. And ultimately what I've been doing lately is I've been praying about it. I've been trusting God, and I've been saying, Lord, whenever I have the urge to spend money on something, please grant me the discernment to understand that I don't need, what I'm looking to buy 9 times out of 10. Like, most of the time I don't need another t-shirt, I don't need another hoodie, I don't need another pair of shoes. And so I just pray for that wisdom and for that ability to be able to discern between what I need and what I want. And so that's really been helping me a ton to, limit how much I'm buying. And so even on top of that, another thing I would add is, when it comes to being punctual, I think for a really long time in my life, I just accepted that I'm not punctual. I'm always late. And what this also did was, it allowed me to get comfortable with being late to places. And what that ended up doing, and why it's part of one of my New Year's resolutions, is because I understand that it's not necessarily about, just being on time and all of that. I think for me, I just really want to get better at valuing other people's time. And so if I'm meeting with someone at 2 o'clock, I want to try to get there at 1:50 or 1:45. And just as a way of saying that I appreciate that person for taking time out of their day to spend time with me. Because what I've come to realize is eventually you just get tired of sending, I'm sorry texts or thanking people for waiting. And so that's been one of the big motivating factors for me. And to even just like, I've also been praying about that, God would help me to stop viewing myself as someone who's always late, and that God would help me to be, more punctual, whether it's going to work, whether it's meeting with my family and things like that. And so, yeah, you guys, I just wanted to make this video to really just talk about how important it is to view yourself the way that God views you, and to not get so caught up in the way that the world perceives you and the titles that the world gives you, and to always focus on the fact that we're all children of God and that we're all made in His image. So just keeping in mind how important that is in terms of relationships, in terms of your self-perception, in terms of dating, in terms of your finances, and in terms of being punctual. And so I hope that these stories that I've been able to give you guys also will help you, all of you in your journey as well. And to just know that as long as you view yourself the way that God views you, and you continue to remember that, there's not much that you can't accomplish, because God made all of us to be great. And so the sooner that you believe that, the sooner that you start applying that, the better it'll be. And so if you guys stuck with me through this whole video, I appreciate all of you guys. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and also feel free to like, comment, and subscribe as well. And I'll talk to all of you guys in the next one.